kissed on a corner, then danced through the night. The boys of the NYPD choir were singing Go Away Babe, and the bells were ringing out for Christmas Day.
Shall we play a game?
Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Not live from Little Rock. Welcome to Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Got a lot to get into. We're going to have an Into the Spider-Verse review. We're going to talk about Christmas traditions. We're going to talk about the alignment, D&D alignment of Santa Claus, among many other things. And also, I have the definitive answer on whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie. So stay tuned for all that and more. I'm going to just jump right into it as we get going with this Christmas edition of Shane Plays Geek Talk. So if you listened to last week's show, you know that Zach, my intrepid and trusty engineer, who Sal's grandmother and her dog Muffin loved dearly, had made plans to go to see Into the Spider-Verse, and I was going to treat him for Christmas because Zach's just a really nice guy, and I appreciate all the hard work that he does to make this show happen. There's a lot of behind the scenes. So we went and saw it Monday night, December 17th. I did treat him. We went and saw it in RPX. I will say we both liked it very much. And to make Sal's grandmother and her dog Muffin happy, we recorded our first reaction thoughts, like as soon as we left the theater. These are our very raw thoughts and discussion. And then after that, I'll have a bit more of an in-depth review of Into the Spider-Verse. So Zach, what did you think about Into the Spider-Verse?
Well, Into the Spider-Verse was definitely one of my favorite movies of the year. And, to tell you the truth, if I were to go back and review all the films I've seen this year, it's definitely in my top 5.
It was really good. It was crazy.
It was definitely great. And the animation was great. The story about a leap of faith, that kind of reminded me of my faith. You just believe. And I just love that part about the movie as well as everything else.
It was a good love letter to Spider-Man, the existing Spider-Man stories, but it was also a great setup for Miles Morales. Did you have anything about it that was your favorite scene or anything like that? There was so much crazy stuff going on.
Exactly. The action was very crazy. To tell you the truth, I don't have a favorite scene in the movie, but I would just tell anyone who's listening to go out and watch it.
To go check it out. So the other thing is, I've never seen an animation style like that. It was kind of like watching a comic book. It was a real crazy mix, and I don't know if this is true or not. I heard somewhere that said they worked 2 years to come up with that animation style. I don't know if that's true or not, but if people have seen just little short clips of it and have been turned off by it, I would recommend give it a, because it's really sweet. It's super sweet. So, and you and I both thought, because the Prowler was in it, and who did the Prowler remind us of?
Spawn.
There was a Spawn vibe going on with the Prowler. So anyway, all right, man. I'm going to do a full review on the show, but like I said, I don't want Muffin coming after me, so I wanted to get you on the show. Did you want to tell the listeners or anything for Christmas or New Year's or anything?
Just everyone have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
All right, man. Zach, I appreciate you. You're a great engineer. You always do a good job on the show, and I was happy to treat you to the movie for Christmas. So, and as they said in the movie, anybody can wear the mask. That was kind of the point of the movie. And another thing I caught when he went into, they had the Stan Lee's costume shop. Did you catch when Miles said, "Can I bring this back?" And Stan Lee said, "Nope, you cannot." So that was kind of a theme saying, "Nope, it's your life now. You can't bring this back. Gotcha. You can't return it." Gotcha. Yeah, okay. So, but did you like that Stan Lee cameo?
Yes, I did. Plus, he had the other cameo where he was, no spoilers.
Right, yeah. So. Well, and it's, Stan's gone now, so that was nice that he got, that in this movie, and they have a bit at the end that's kind of a tribute to one of his quotes and stuff. All right, Zach, well, go ahead, yeah.
I got also about the animations, basically we were watching a comic book come to life, and as well as one being written at the same time,
right. It was super cool, and I liked how they worked in the captions and the thought balloons and everything, and the what janky old broke down Spider-Man. Because a little bit of a spoiler, but at the beginning of the movie, you think that this super on his game Peter Parker is going to train Miles, and then he ends up with this dumped out, burned out old Peter Parker. Right. So did you like that?
I did, because you know what? The other Spider-Man, Peter Parker, he needed that too.
Right.
You know, that's for his.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. So yeah, it was a Peter Parker story, but it was also a Miles Morales, and I was kind of surprised that Spider-Man Noir, who is the dark Spider-Man, was like comic relief. Did you like him?
I did love him. I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
I liked it. You had what? Peter Porker, the Spider-Ham. You had Spider-Gwen, or Spider-Woman. You had Spider, kind of a Japanese mecha manga spider. And then you had Spider-Man Noir. And then you had old janky, busted up, broken down with a gut Peter Parker. Yep. And then you had, of course, Miles Morales. And then you had Aunt May, who was kind of hardcore a little bit.
She was, the way she was walking to her. No spoilers.
Well, she's also like, take it outside. So, all right, we're going to go. Zach, again, Merry Christmas, and thanks for everything you do, buddy. Okay, so thanks again, Zach. Merry Christmas, buddy. So, as you can tell, we both really liked it. And in the days that have passed, we watched it Monday night. I'm recording this Saturday morning, not long before the show actually broadcast. That's radio, folks. We both really liked it. And well, my point was, in the few days that has passed, my opinion hasn't changed. I think it just has an amazing, fresh animation style. It's an excellent mesh of movie and animation and comic book style. And it comes up with this fresh, dynamic, quirky, and effective style. And I think, as I mentioned while Zach and I were talking, I've heard, I don't know, this is, take it with a grain of salt, but I heard they worked on that style for like 2 years before, settling on the exact style of the movie. And there's just so much crazy stuff going on. So, they work captions, like meanwhile kind of captions and thought balloons and just all kinds of comic book language, if you will, the language of comic books into the movie. The colors are crazy. The style is just amazing. And there's this end credit. It's not the end credit scene, but the credits themselves are like a work of art. I mean, I've just never seen anything like it. So it's just frenetic and crazy and amazing. So coming away, the thesis of this movie, Zach and I mentioned it a little bit. Anyone can wear the mask. And that kind of goes back. There's been several times in different Spider-Man, comics or movies or whatever, where they've talked about one of the attractions of Spider-Man for people. And one of his, strengths for his enemy, anybody could be. You don't know who's under that mask. So only, the readers or the viewers or whatever know that it's, like Peter Parker. Or now, like we have Miles Morales and some other ones. And that's kind of a strength, really, because it can be inspiring. So anyway, now Peter Parker started wearing the mask to protect his identity and those that he loves. But, there's another aspect to that. It can be anybody. We talked about Stan Lee's costume shop, which I loved that scene. And I'm sure they did all that before Stan Lee passed away. So it's, especially poignant that they had that scene. And he tells Miles two things. He says, one, no returns. There's a big sign there that says like no returns, and Miles, I think, says, can I bring it back if it doesn't fit? And Stan Lee, playing basically himself as this costume shop proprietor, because Miles Morales goes and gets basically a Halloween costume level costume for a lot of the movie. And, Stan Lee says no returns. So it's like, you're committed to this life now, whether you know it or not. And he also says it always fits eventually. So you take those, there's no returns. It always fits eventually. And anyone can wear the mask and put them all together. And that's kind of the thesis, if you will. I don't know what thesis, the thesis, if you will. One thing that I probably should have led with this, but the Spider-Verse thing has been going on. They did the first Spider-Verse crossover in Marvel Comics in, I think, 2015. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, they worked every Spider-Man version that had been to, they worked in, Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham. They worked in Spider-Woman, who is Peter Parker's daughter from another, or Spider-Girl from another universe. They worked in the Japanese Spider-Man, who's Spider-Man with a giant mecha robot. They worked in the Spider-Man of the comic strips from the newspapers. They worked in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. And that was pretty rough because, I mean, the villains just took them out like that in the comic book. And not everybody was happy with that, including Miss Kitty. So they've been doing this for a few years in the comics. And now they're doing another one right now, another Spider-Verse. I think it may be called Spider-Geddon or something like that. But they bring just dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of Spider-Men and women and related beings from all over the multiverse, and they come together to fight a common threat called the Inheritors that feed on. They're like multiversal vampires that are incredibly powerful, and they feed on spider essence, and these are all spider totems, but I'm not going to go too deep into that. It doesn't come into play in this movie. The point is that, in the comics, they've been working on this, there's a lot of different Spider-Men, beings, women, whatever, across the multiverse. And to have all these multiple universes that's a trope and an old standby in comics for as long as I can imagine. Or remember, not imagine, as long as I can remember. Crisis on Infinite Earths, 1985, DC had so many parallel Earths, their continuity was all messed up, or so they say, and they were trying to fix it, So it's just very, if you're watching the Flash TV show, that constantly comes into play. Constantly. You get like a different version of Harry Wells every season, which is one of the best parts of the show, in my opinion. The point is that, they're not necessarily breaking any new ground here, but what they, as far as storytelling and comic books, but movie wise for the wider audience that's, probably not super deep into comic books, this is probably a pretty big new concept. You've got all these different Spider-Men or in Spider-Women and pigs and whatever working together, future spider manga that have a mecha suit and just all this stuff. So they come together, and it's not a revolutionary new concept. So I've got a friend, in fact, I was talking with him yesterday, and he was really upset with this movie because, his feeling, which he's entitled to view it this way, is that they were diluting the core character and, and he didn't like that anyone can wear the mask, cause he's like, anybody, no, it's Peter Parker, da, da, da. And, I'm not going to argue that. That's one of those things that, I've argued, I've felt that way about other stuff. I've had my nerd rage, my geek rage, and I'm not, he's welcome to that opinion. I feel this is a little bit different because they're not saying our Peter Parker doesn't exist. They're just saying all these other versions of Peter Parker, because there's like two different versions of Peter Parker in the movie, in addition to all these other Spider-Men and Miles Morales. So it's not, it's not like they've changed the menu. They've just expanded it. And that's my personal take on it. But, I'm not here to this is, I want to be very positive. I thought this was an amazing, amazing movie. Even if it wasn't about Spider-Man, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. And I like Miles Morales. I've been a Miles Morales fan since, Brian Michael Bendis introduced him. Has it been like 2008 or something? It's been a while since he was introduced after Peter Parker died in the Ultimate Comics universe, Ultimate Marvel universe. And then they did this big Secret Wars, and Ultimate Universe and mainstream Marvel universe have combined. And now you have Miles Morales and Peter Parker in the same universe. So I prefer that instead of saying, well, Peter Parker never existed, or suddenly the cosmic cube changed everything and Peter Parker is now Miles Morales. They didn't do that. So I'm fine with that. Anyway, amazing movie, amazing visuals. Even if Spider-Man hadn't been in it, I would have been blown away. It is very unique style, soundtrack, it's very cool stuff. There's some neat little things in it. At the beginning, they flash a Comics Code Authority logo, symbol approved by the Comics Code Authority. And for old comic book nerds like me, that was a major nostalgia kick. There was a lot of sort of love for all the different eras of Marvel Comics and Spider-Man, just all meshed together. And this movie manages to be Miles's story and Peter Parker's story. So that's not an easy thing to do. Now, ultimately, it's Miles' story, but it's also Peter Parker's. It's not like Peter Parker is just this, minor side character or something like that. He gets his arc and things. And, like they say in the movie, he's a janky old broke down hobo Spider-Man because he's a Peter Parker from an Earth where he's in the future, like another 10 years in the future or something like that. And he's just, he's fallen on hard times and his relationship with Mary Jane is not good. And he's just laying around eating pizza. And a common thing in the movie is like, man, you've gotten bigger. And what they're really saying is you've gotten fat. He's not obese. He just got a gut. And it works. And he says he's Peter B. Parker, right? Not Peter Parker, Peter B. Parker. So they're purposefully saying this is not the main Peter Parker that we know. Now there's another Peter Parker in the movie, that is like amazing with it, has it all together. So you don't, based on the previews, I was like, it looked like that they were making Miles Morales super hip and cool and Peter Parker like this oaf almost. But after seeing the movie, I was like, okay, because they show you versions of Peter Parker that are super with it and together, even more so than the Peter Parker we know from Earth 616, which is the main Marvel universe, according to their continuity. So it's not just, Peter Parker's a joke compared to Miles. It's just this particular version of Peter Parker needed to get things back together. And, by the end of the movie, it looks like he might. So another thing that was interesting here is Spider-Man Noir. I've read some of the Noir comics from Marvel, where they take existing characters and put them in sort of a black and white, harsher, grittier Noir universe. And in the comic book, Spider-Man Noir is like no joke. I mean, he makes Wolverine kind of look like a teddy bear. But in this movie, they still kept the fact that he was, he's hardcore, he's in black and white. He doesn't understand what colors are or what their names are. He gets fascinated with the Rubik's Cube, but he ends up being the comic relief and it works. It doesn't feel forced or anything like that. Spider-Ham is almost, superfluous as the comic relief because Spider-Man Noir does such a great job at it. I almost wish they would have played Spider-Man or Spider-Ham less cartoony, because you're expecting me to be cartoony and Porky Pig, but then he's more hardcore. I think that would have been interesting to, Noir is the comic relief kind of, and then, Spider-Ham isn't, but they played Spider-Ham and Noir sort of as comic relief. So, this movie is amazing almost all the way through. The only scene that I would kind of pick at is there's a scene, and I'm not going to say when it is, when 3 of the alternate spider beings get introduced all at once. So like everybody else, all the other spider types get their own, full intro and and when these other 3 get introduced, it's almost side by side simultaneously, just boom, here we are. And there was something about those 5 minutes or so. And I think it wasn't just them being introduced. It was just the whole scene, the whole setup. That's the only part where the movie kind of falls apart for me. And it doesn't get terrible, but it just doesn't have a good cohesiveness and rhythm and hitting on all cylinders, as the rest of the movie does. So that was really the only weak moment. And, it was still good. It just wasn't as good storytelling or editing wise or something, as the rest of the movie. So there's lots and lots of nods and Easter eggs, including, like on Miles Morales' phone, he's got B. Bendis and S. Ditko on his call list. And those are, Brian Michael Bendis, who created Miles Morales, and, Steve Ditko basically created Spider-Man, all the look and the gadgets and this and that. And that's just barely scratching the surface on nods. And there's a lot of love in this movie for the old 1967 animated Spider-Man. The end credits scene ties into that, while also working in yet another version of Spider-Man, hinting that, I think I've already heard there's going to be a sequel. And that end credit scene will be kind of setting up how it all work. Because in the movie, they can't spend too much time in another dimension. It's harmful to them. There's this really funny, like Spider-Man did a Christmas album. It's like Spidey bells. And I got to get that. In fact, I need to try to find that and see if I can work that into a future show. Again, the after credit scene is epic, where they kind of show how everything's going to tie together in the next one. The closing credits, as I mentioned before, an artistic, insane delight. It's just a really good movie. I probably waxed on much longer about it than I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it here, but major, huge, web spinners up, both web spinners up for, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Go check it out. All right, let's do some show notes and then, give some love to a sponsor. And after that, we'll be back with more exciting goodness, including, but not limited to, what is Santa's alignment in D&D terms? But here we go. So, as always, I want to remind folks that this is a live radio show. Well, not always live. It broadcasts on 101.1 FM, The Answer in the Central Arkansas area on Saturdays at 1 p.m. Central. It's usually live, but today, for example, is pre-recorded. When it's live, you can call in and I throw out the number and everything. You can also always tweet me at Shane Plays, ShanePlays. You might want to check out that Twitter anyway, ShanePlays. Right now I'm doing the Shane Plays 20 Days of Christmas, where I'm doing giveaways of Steam keys once a day. All you got to do is retweet or tweet back at me on the tweet I send out every day to be entered. Show notes and links for every show are up at shaneplays.com, ShanePlays.com. When the podcast version of this show goes out, there will be show notes as well. That's usually when they go up. Last week's show was tabletop games chat and gift ideas with Game Goblin. So if you're listening today, Josh Wilhelmi, or if you're listening on Saturday, January 22nd, you still got time to get over to Game Goblins. Josh came in, the owner, last weekend. Been a long-time sponsor of the show. Appreciate him and Game Goblins very much. But anyway, they have a lot of great Christmas gifts, stocking stuffers, and they have a whole shelf. It's like a couple of shelves put together with clearance, 40% off. And there was some pretty good stuff on there. I was checking it out yesterday. So get on over there, through, I guess, Christmas Eve, if you're looking for a gift for the gamer in your life. This show does go out as a podcast after the radio show on the blog, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Podbean, SoundCloud, YouTube, and more. And last, but never ever least, Shane Plays is also carried on Krypton Radio. Krypton Radio is SciFi for your Wi-Fi. Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
The die is cast.
Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions. Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local
game store or trolllord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.
Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. We're pre-recorded this week as a reminder, so please don't try to call in. I know that, wow, it's just, the phones are just always blowing up around here, but I just want to remind everyone we are pre-recorded today, Saturday, December 22nd. Going to talk about some Christmas stuff, specifically following up on the Christmas pickle from last week, and then the Christmas, what alignment in D&D terms is Santa Claus? So we're going to talk about that here in a moment. First, I wanted to, highlight, I did a special podcast that went out this past week. I don't do them very often. It takes quite a bit of my time to do the radio show and then get the podcast version of that out. But this one was important enough, and it was timed to a Kickstarter that's ending December, basically Christmas Eve at midnight, depending on what time zone you're in. And it's really important to me. So I worked with Griff, who is part of this documentary team, him and his partner Chris, and they've done Secrets of Blackmoor, the true history of Dungeons and Dragons. And it's just fascinating stuff. I really recommend you go listen to the special podcast. I'll link in the show notes, or just search for Shane Plays Geek Talk on, any of the major podcast directories. Specifically look for Secrets of Blackmoor, Shane Plays, and you'll find it. We have a really, really, really good discussion about the origins of Dungeons and Dragons. Not so much the origins of Dungeons and Dragons, but the origins of role-playing itself. Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax famously co-created Dungeons and Dragons. There's a whole story with Dave Arneson and his gaming group in the 60s and 70s in the Twin Cities area, where role-playing generated. And then, Gary Gygax came along and Dungeons & Dragons and TSR. It's absolutely fascinating. If you're into gaming and RPG history at all, and I am if you follow this show at all, it's really good stuff. I don't usually, my show this was good stuff. Griff had a lot of fascinating things to talk about. So make sure to go check it out. Now, the Christmas pickle, I wanted to follow up on it because last week I was like, I'd never heard of this Christmas pickle thing. And, Zach hadn't and my guests hadn't. So I did a little bit more research on this, and this looks to be a sort of an American tradition that goes back to sometime in the late 1800s. And there's two different schools of thought and what it is. Let me back up. Some families or whatever have traditions where they hide a Christmas ornament that looks like a pickle in the tree somewhere. And then whoever finds that pickle, some people do it on Christmas Day or whatever, but whoever finds the pickle first, then depending on how the tradition goes, either you get like a year of good luck or you get a special present from Santa Claus. So, and I'd never heard of it. I thought people were messing with me, but I asked around and a lot of people do this. So where it comes from, I went to Wikipedia, which is, of course, is the source of all truth. And it's one tradition has it coming from a marketing thing where they were trying to market in the 1890s the importing glass Christmas tree decorations. I don't know how that ties into a pickle, but anyway. And the other main theory is that tradition came up during the American Civil War, and a prisoner asked for a pickle or a guard for a pickle because he was starving, and then the guard gave him a pickle, and then later they said the pickle saved his life. So I don't know. Anyway, and then yet another. There's other ones, but those seem to be the two main ones. There's also another theory about kids being trapped in a barrel of pickles by an innkeeper, and it's just strange stuff. But there you go. So I will link. I think I did last week's show notes. I'll do it again this week. The Christmas pickle. I don't know why it fascinates me so much, but I think I want to do it. with my son and my nephews and stuff like that. I think it would be a lot of fun. All right. So the next thing is, in D&D terms, what alignment is Santa Claus? Now, I love this kind of stuff. I just love thinking about it. And I came across this Reddit post. I think it's in the RPG subreddit. Last time I saw it, it actually gotten voted down to 0. I think people were getting annoyed with the discussion or something, but I thought it was great. I'll link to the Reddit thread in the show notes. But what alignment is Santa Claus? And I think it's interesting to talk about this from two perspectives. One, I personally like the alignment system in D&D. I'm not saying that it should be applied to every gaming system out there or even every setting inside D&D, but the basic alignment setting I'm a fan of. I have no problem with a fantasy world having literal cosmological magical forces that literally, so that your morals or your belief system or whatever are not just subjective. They're part of the natural order of things. You know, just like in a D&D setting, I don't have a problem with all goblins being evil. They're not just products of their environment. They're not just they're evil because it's in a fantasy setting. So I'm not saying that's how things work in the real world. I just always like the alignment system. And I think it can lead to good role playing. If people, really think about it, would my character do this? Would they not? Why? Now, not every group has to use alignment. I think it is. I think it should be a very strongly recommended optional rule, personally. But there's plenty of groups out there that play and they don't use alignment and they're just fine. All right. So having said all that, what alignment would Kris Kringle, St. Nicholas, Santa Claus himself be? And I'm sure this has been discussed before, and there's probably plenty of articles and this and that, but this is my approach to it. I think we can all save ourselves some time. And this seemed to be sort of the consensus in the Reddit discussion as well, that Santa is going to land somewhere on the good side. Remember, with alignment, you have good, you have neutral, and then you have evil. And then the other part of the grid is that you have law, again, neutral, and then chaos. So the question comes down to, is Santa going to be chaotic good, neutral good, or lawful good? And there was, there's discussion on both sides. So most of the discussion was on, would he be chaotic good or lawful good? And the reason people are landing on that is because if he's, he's got a list and a set of standards and he checks it twice and he holds other people to that standard. And depending on how their behavior matches up to that standard, or laws, if you will, then they either get rewarded or punished. They get good toys or whatever, or they get coal, in their stocking or whatever. So the argument can be made for lawful. He's got his warehouse and in his workshop, and everything has to run by precision, and he does all this stuff in one night, which is, a feat of logistics that is, mind-boggling, and I'm sure involves lots of time travel and magic. Now, on the other side, though, in order to do what he does, by nature, he has to break laws. He has to disregard the laws of whatever country, place, maybe even house that he's going to. Because it doesn't say if if your parents approve. It's basically like, if you're a good boy, you're a good girl, I'm going to bring you a toy or whatever. Do a little Christmas magic miracle for you, regardless of what the laws of the country or the town or whatever. So he's going to break into the house somehow. So, and he's going to, Santa Claus is coming to town, that famous Rankin Bass thing. He's defying the, Burgermeister Burger to deliver toys to the kids. That's where the whole chimney thing, he was sneaking into the house. So that could be argued chaotic good. So here's what, and I don't, neutral good is actually a pretty powerful and comprehensive alignment, but for the sake of time, I won't go into that, because might even argue that he's neutral good. But here's where I'm going to go. So this is what I said in the thread. said, I'm thinking we can all agree Santa's on the good portion of the alignment grid. However, he has the good versus naughty list, which we've already covered, which indicates some law. However, he breaks laws and does whatever he needs in order to make the children happy, which indicates some chaos. Think about like Robin Hood, right? He's sort of a chaotic good character, even though you could argue maybe neutral good. But anyway, I would further argue that we need a clause for indicating Santa transcends the normal limitations of a mortal being and is a force, capital F, in the world, as well as being a unique sentient being. So running everything through the Bat computer, we get a little card popping out that says, and this is the official last word on the subject, Santa, his alignment is Santa good. So there you go. Mystery solved. We're going to solve one other mystery in a second, which is Die Hard a Christmas movie? This is the raging debate of the ages, and we will get to that here in a moment before the show is over. However, I did want to I wanted to do something kind of as my friends, my listeners, etc. I kind of want to share a lot of what Christmas means to me, and they talk a lot about peace on earth. So I just want to share this with you. And now what I'm about to share with you, you don't have to subscribe to or believe. I'm not saying that you have to believe this or you're a terrible, terrible person or anything like that. I just want to share with you an important part of my Christmas every year. Ever since I was a child, my family would read this before opening. We'd read this and then pray and then open presents. I'm just going to read it with you. I mean, feel free to pray if afterwards if you so choose, or so incline. And then we would open presents and etc. And I've brought this tradition into my family. It's very important to me. So again, it's just I love all the secular part of Christmas. I love all of it. Trees, presents, and all the TV shows, movies, and all that. But at its core, without this, Christmas is not the same for me. And a lot of people will point to this and say, this was why we celebrate Christmas. But anyway, so this is from Luke chapter 2 from the New Testament in the New American Standard Bible. Now in those days a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that a census be taken of all the inhabited earth. This was the first census taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. And everyone was on his way to register for the census, each to his own city. Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the city of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and family of David, in order to register along with Mary, who was engaged to him and was with child. While they were there, the days were completed for her to give birth. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, and she wrapped him in clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. In the same region, there were some shepherds staying out in the fields and keeping watch over their flock by night. And an angel of the Lord suddenly stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terribly frightened. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for behold, I bring you good news of great joy, which will be for all the people. For today in the city of David there has been born to you a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. This will be a sign for you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." And suddenly there appeared with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among men, with whom he is pleased." So that's when they talk about peace on earth. That's where it comes from. Luke chapter 2, verse 14. It's light came down into darkness. The ultimate present. So anyway, I want to give some love to sponsor Game Goblins, and then after that, we are going to solve the ultimate mystery of is Die Hard a Christmas movie. So stay tuned. I've got the definitive, scientifically provable answer for whether it's a Christmas movie or not. All right, folks, check out Game Goblins, show sponsor Game Goblins. Some goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. That's 501-224-GAME or gamegoblins.com. Folks, don't forget that they're conveniently located 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and they're staffed by friendly employees. And they've got this week, I think it runs through maybe up through Christmas. They have a clearance section of 40% off, and there's some good stuff over there, 40% off. For all your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. That's good stuff, based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins works hard for your business and works hard to keep it. Like I was over there last night, and there was a food truck. They got food trucks outside now, like Friday night. You know, if you want to pop over and get something to eat while you're playing, you can just walk right out the door. So anyway, check out Game Goblins. And you know, I'm so glad to have them as a sponsor. First time customers mention Shane Plays and receive 10% off your purchase of $50 or more, and tell them Shane Plays sent you. So, all right, here's the last thing, and then you know, Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next week on Shane Plays. But I have the ultimate scientifically, you know, the debate of the ages: is Die Hard a Christmas movie? You know, you got Bruce Willis running around fighting the bad guys in a big, huge, futuristic skyscraper. At least it was in the 80s. And it's at Christmas time. There's a Christmas party going on. Ho, ho, ho. Now I have a machine gun. There's Christmas ornaments of this movie. There's people who go see, like, they play the movie around Christmas time in the theaters. And I figured out, I ran all the elements. And I figured out definitively, you can use this in debates with your friends, whether you're for or against. This is the ultimate definitive answer to whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie. This is my, you know, it's unassailable, objective, scientifically proven. So here we go. Whoops, we're out of time. Folks, we'll catch you next week on Shane Plays. Merry Christmas. I said the show is over, didn't I? Well, I want to do one last thing. I want to give a tribute to Penny Marshall, who we recently lost. She was, of course, Laverne DeFazio on Laverne and Shirley for like 170 something episodes. And she was also an actress in other TV shows and movies. And she became a director and a producer. And you know, growing up, I watched a lot of sitcoms. Of course, I watched, you know, Happy Days. Laverne and Shirley was a spinoff of Happy Days. And Mork and Mindy, believe it or not, was a spinoff of Happy Days as well. And so was Joni Loves Chachi, but we won't talk about that right now. However, there were some sitcoms that just really, I just watched constantly over and over. And, you know, at that time in my life, younger, you know, preteen, tween, you know, elementary school, whatever, you know, they were kind of forming my idea of how people worked and life worked and all that. And whether for good or bad, I mean, that's a debate for another time. But anyway, sitcoms and TV were a big part of my life growing up. And Laverne and Shirley was one of the big ones. I always, even you think, why would a little boy who's, you know, 10 want to watch Laverne and Shirley about, you know, two, you know, blue collar women that work at a beer factory in Milwaukee trying to make it, you know, and I guess that's just a testament to, you know, the writing and the stories and the characters and the acting and all of that. And I mean, the show would not absolutely in any way whatsoever been the same without Penny Marshall as Laverne, that big L on her clothes, that big monogrammed L. She had this interesting mix of, she seemed tough, like she could kind of kick your rear, but she was also, feminine and sweet. And it was, and the dynamic between her being kind of a more, you know, outgoing or kind of character, and then Shirley being more of a sweet kind of, not quite mousy, but, you know, withdrawn, maybe more of an introvert, whatever. What was a great dynamic. Of course, you had Lenny and Squiggy and, you know, their wacky neighbors and all that. But Penny Marshall, when I heard she was gone, I believe at the age of 75 over the past week, you know, I was like, oh, wow, you know, that one hurts. And then of course, you know, Penny Marshall went on to direct films. She directed Jumpin' Jack Flash, which was big in the 80s. She directed Big with Tom Hanks. That's huge. She directed and executive produced Awakenings, directed and executive produced A League of Their Own, which is a big movie. Directed and executive produced Renaissance Man. She directed Preacher's Wife, and she directed Riding in Cars with Boys. And then, she, produced, she was a producer. So, she went on to have a pretty big career in the TV and movie business. But that character Laverne, that she portrayed and added so much life to and so much character to is just, that's one of the big ones. That's one of the big ones from TV and sitcom history. And, it's sad that she's gone. It's part of life, but it's sad at the same time. So I just wanted to, one of the great, these 70s, 80s, 50s, 60s, whatever, these sitcoms and TV shows had such amazing, really, really good theme songs. So I love no pun intended, the theme of this theme song, what it's saying and what it's talking about. So, to kind of give Laverne, Penny Marshall, send off, we're going to play the, one of the versions anyway. The show was on TV for several years, so the theme song, changed a few times, but we're going to play the theme song from Laverne and Shirley, that classic sitcom.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Schlemiel, Schlemazel, Hasenbeck Incorporated.
We're gonna do it. Give us any chance, we'll take it. Read us any rule, we'll break it. We're gonna make our dreams come true. Doing it our way. Nothing's gonna turn us back now. Straight ahead and on the track now. We're gonna make our dreams come true. Doing it our way. There's nothing we won't try. Never heard the word impossible this time. There's no stopping us. We're gonna do it. On your mark, get set and go now. Got a dream and we just know now. We're gonna make that dream come true. And we'll do it our way, yes, our way. Make our dreams come true. And we'll do it our way, yes, our way. Make our dreams come true. For me and you.
And yet another surprise when you thought the show was over. This is actually live. This is Shane live with Zach. Zach, what's up, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good. Spider-Verse. Spider-Verse.
Spider-Verse is
Loved
great.
it. Yeah, people listened in on the first part of the show. Didn't really get a chance to talk about Aquaman or Bumblebee.
Yeah.
Or Mary Poppins Returns. Looking, hopefully at some point in a future show we'll get to address those. I want to see Aquaman and I want to see Bumblebee big time.
Well, see, I plan
Mary Pop. Yeah, go ahead.
I plan to go see both of them on Monday.
Yeah, I don't. I don't know when I'll be able to get back out. So, but anyway, here's what I want to call in. I want to thank everybody for listening. And, it just happened to work out that we had a couple extra minutes for me to call in live after the show. And I just want to let everybody know that I've talked with Salem, and we will be continuing the Shane Plays Geek Talk show into 2019. So just want to thank everybody for listening and your support. And just want to kind of share that with you. I appreciate everybody at Salem, Lynn Dyer and Chuck and Randy and definitely Dave Ellswick, who has gotten me into this crazy thing called radio. And I wanted to say, I don't push this a lot on the show. I did a little bit last week, but I don't a whole lot. This is a radio show first and a podcast second. So a podcast, you can just, it doesn't have a whole lot of overhead, but it also doesn't have the same kind of reach that a radio show does. I mean, I potentially can reach 700,000 people here in the central Arkansas area randomly as they're switching their dials. And that is just something a podcast can't do. Plus, I love live radio. I love it. It's just a whole different thing. And I love podcasting too. So I push this show out as a podcast. Sometimes I edit a little bit. And sometimes I'll do a special podcast like I did with Secrets of Blackmore, the true history of Dungeons and Dragons that I mentioned during this show. That just went out as a special podcast. What I'm getting to is that it's a little different. It's an experiment. It's something different. I don't know of any other geek talk radio shows out there that are on terrestrial FM radio. Maybe some of the larger, New York or LA or maybe even Dallas, some of those larger metropolitan areas might, but I don't know of it out there. So if you like this, and you're wanting to looking to give a little bit of money out at the end of the Christmas season or whatever. Now, first of all, I would never want you to give money to the show that would go to charity ever, ever, ever. But if you just happen to want to support the show, I do have a Patreon account, and it's Shane. It's patreon.com/ShanePlays. And people can help out for as little as $1 an episode. And as I've said before, I do have sponsors, and I appreciate them very much. But I don't make, I don't get rich off the show. I do it because it's a labor of love. And I got to a point in my life where I was like, I've got to do something different and follow my dreams, or I'm going to go crazy. And hopefully other people are enjoying the ride. So, I'm never going to say, hey, support the Patreon or the show goes away. That is never, ever, ever going to be my thing. But if you want to support it, I do appreciate it, very much. Cause it's a different kind of show. It's a radio show and a podcast covering a wide range of pop culture and geeky topics that I don't know of any other show that does it. Most podcasts take one topic and that's all they do. And I cover, I often hear from people, I love your show because I heard about stuff I wouldn't know otherwise. And now I'm checking it out. And so that means a lot to me. And so I talk about the stuff that means something to me. I try to expose and bring visibility to things that I think are important. I've used this show to try to raise awareness on a con man who took advantage of some local cosplayers. I've tried to help Secrets of Blackmore. I try to help charities, you name it. So I'm trying to have fun. And also, maybe do a little good along the way or whatever. I'm not trying to pretend that, this is some noble cause or anything like that. Point being, if you like this show, and you like this kind of thing, again, I'm not going to say the show will never go, you Patreon or the show goes away, but I wouldn't complain. I do appreciate my Patreon supporters, and that little adds up over the years. That is added up to hundreds of dollars of support, which is very much appreciated. So I wanted to tell you again, Zach, and again, that's patreon.com/ShanePlays if anybody wants to help out, or if anybody wants to sponsor the show. I take care of my sponsors. Ask any of my sponsors, reach out at Shane@ShanePlays.com, or call the station and they'll put you in touch with me. I'd love to have you as a sponsor on the show. All right. So Zach, thanks again. I hope you have a very merry holiday season, Christmas season. I know that you and I both celebrate Christmas,
yes,
not just the holidays, but I was got a special little Christmas card we're going to do to the listening audience. My wife, we're in my home office, and my wife, Sheila, and my son, Justice, are here with us, and we're going to wish everybody Merry Christmas. So Justice, come here. Are you going to get shy all of a sudden? Come here, buddy. You can get up on my lap. All right. Wave at the camera. I think Zach can see you. Wave at the camera.
Yes,
woo! All right. So we're gonna say 3, 2, 1, and on 1 we're gonna say Merry Christmas. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So 3, 2, 1. Merry Christmas. You got anything else you want to say, buddy? That doesn't involve poop?
No.
Merry Christmas. We'll see you next weekend, Zach.
All right. Merry Christmas.